Dr. Shannon, it's a pleasure to have you out here with us.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Great, great. So I'm the CEO of SGS Group, and Universal College Bangladesh is a venture of SGS Group. SGS Group is the largest conglomerate, private sector conglomerate in the healthcare and education sectors. We run a bevy of schools and hospitals out here. And fortunately, with all good luck, we are ranked #1 in all these areas. And it's a privilege to have an association with Monash College out here. And I think this is the first time that the government has recognized and approved an international education provider in Bangladesh. For us, it is a privilege to host these events, especially for the Bangladesh academic community, because these kind of training workshops are far and wide. And Universal College Bangladesh is being the thought leader in this industry in providing a pathway to these students and teachers to understand global knowledge and global research. So I think these short workshops also provide them an insight into the kind of research that Monash College does. Till now in Bangladesh, we've already touched 10 workshops with Monash College, and I think with Monash College and Monash University. So we've done a series of workshops starting last October till now. And the response is so incredible. The positioning of these workshops, the way students are responding, we are very encouraged. We see teachers, even parents in some workshops joining in. And so the kind of workshops, the topics that Monash is taking are really relevant to the community right now. For example, today's workshop, IT, digital areas, computer science are some of the top fields that people are interested in. And at the same time, they would like to really know from an authentic background on how this can change their career, their life, their education especially. So your presence out here provides that significant pillar of authenticity as well as your personal research. For these children, for teachers, for parents, what you are going to speak today will add so much value to their life. I can't tell it less, because it's not just the numbers. We expect approximately 300 plus participants today. And this is huge for any workshop. Usually our workshops, I would expect 20, 30, 40 participants. 40 would be considered a big number. And we are looking at 400 plus, 300 plus participants. And and like Mr. Jamal said, despite today being a holiday and it's Friday, people are taking their time off to join. So we really thank the participants. And I have also noticed that all participants in all our workshops are really the serious ones. Nobody is joining just for the sake of it. Of course, we are giving certificates of participation, but they are joining at the start and staying till the end because of the value that they know that the knowledge of the workshop provides. So our gratitude to you, Dr. Shannon, our gratitude to also Monash College, because without their support, such kind of workshops can't come to the Bangladesh community. And this is without any exaggeration. I have to say that among schools across Bangladesh, the positioning of Monash now is really of a thought leader. And there are a lot of emails I get, a lot of messages I get asking when is the next workshop. And this is the value that you are bringing. So thank you so much. As Jamal said, almost on a per second basis, we have one participant joining. So it may be prudent for us to perhaps wait for 5 minutes, but by 11:10, Mr. Jamal, we should start by 11:10, I think, because we should be cognizant of people's times also. And, and Dr. Shannon also is in Australia, and there it is already 4 hours ahead. So we also realize that you are taking off your invaluable time for us. So thank you, Dr. Shannon.
It's fine. I'm more than happy to.
It's a pleasure to have you here. Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hope I can live up to that glowing introduction there.
Jamal, so we'll start in 3 minutes.
Sure.
Great, great. So I think the flow will be, you will probably present UCB for a couple of minutes, and then we'll hand over to Dr. Shannon, right?
Yes, I have made him understand that I will start, then I will invite you to give a inaugural speech. After that, I will hand over to Dr. Shannon.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Yes, Jamal, we can start now.
Good morning, everyone. This is Jamaluddin Jami, Head of Enrollment at Universal College, Bangladesh, the exclusive partner of Monash College Australia, and the only Ministry of Education approved international education provider in Bangladesh. I'd like to have the pleasure to welcome you all to our free workshop with Monash College Australia on digital skills for a great career and higher education. To conduct the session today, we have among us today Dr. Shannon Rios, Manager, Education Strategy, Learning and Teaching, Monash College Diplomas, Australia. Please note that attendees will receive joint certificates of participation from Monash College and Universal College, Bangladesh. So the registration link, certification registration link will be shared after the workshop. At first, for the audience, I would like to answer a question. What is Universal College Bangladesh? Universal College Bangladesh is the exclusive partner of Monash College Australia and is the only Ministry of Education approved international education provider in Bangladesh. Students can jumpstart their journey to a degree at Monash University immediately after their O, AS, A, and HSC levels by joining Monash programs right here in Bangladesh at Universal College. So students receive the same global academic curriculum, 100% guaranteed entry to Monash University, and an extremely cost-effective tuition fees. Monash University, if I talk about it, it's a world top 100 ranked university. So whatever the ranking, you just name it, you'll find Monash within top 100. We must appreciate the initiatives of STS Group that brought this brand to Bangladesh. So to talk about the STS Group and its affiliation with Universal College Bangladesh, let me hand over the virtual platform to Group CEO of STS Group, Dr. Sandeep. Dr. Sandeep, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Jamal. Thank you so much, Dr. Shannon, for joining us. I'll very quickly give an introduction. SGS Group is the largest private sector conglomerate in the hospital, that is healthcare and education sectors. We run brands like Evercare, DPS, ISG, which are all ranked #1 in their respective areas. At the same time, we are very proud to be associated with Universal College Bangladesh as our latest and newest venture. We already have Universal College Lanka, which offers Monash College programs in Sri Lanka and is performing significantly high in terms of academic results. So our attempt is to bring the benchmark set by Monash internationally by Universal College Lanka into Universal College Bangladesh. What we are providing, as Mr. Jamal has said, is degree pathways to Monash University. We provide the Monash University Foundation Year, which is comparable to year 12 of Australian education. We also provide Monash College diplomas in various streams, which are equivalent to the first year of Monash University degree. And for us, it is a proud moment that Bangladeshi students can do their year 12 comparable and year 1 equivalent right here in Gulshan, in Dhaka, and they don't need to go anywhere else. In these times of pandemic, in these times where there are various reasons why students would like to follow international programs out here in Bangladesh, Universal College Bangladesh is a trendsetter. It's a historic moment, and I thank you all for being here. Once again, I thank Dr. Shannon, I thank Monash College, and Jamal, thank you for leading this discussion so nicely. Go ahead, Jamal.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Sandeep, for your wonderful words. At Universal College Bangladesh, we offer Monash University Foundation Year, which is Australia 12 degree. You need to just finish your O-levels. Right after your O-levels, you come to that will give you a guaranteed entry into the world top universities, of course. We also offer Monash College diplomas in applied data science, business, engineering, and information technology. So these programs are equivalent to Monash University first year. It means right after your A-levels or AS level, you come to us, join at Universal College Bangladesh, do Monash College diplomas here. That will give you a guaranteed entry to Monash University. I mean, second year at Monash University, either in Australia or Malaysia, wherever you want. So without much talking, let me hand over the floor to our main resource person today to conduct a session on digital skills for a great career and higher education. It is important because post-pandemic era is going to be a different world, and to survive in this world, you need to be acquainted with that digital platform. We'll be learning a lot of things today, and after this workshop also you'll be provided certificates, and you need to register to have the certificate. So the registration link will be just shared in this chat box. Now I'm handing over the session to Dr. Shannon Rios, Manager Education Strategy, Learning and Teaching, Monash College Diplomas.
Okay, thank you very much for that very impressive introduction. And I just want to reiterate all the wonderful, great things that our college partners have been doing, and hopefully UCB can continue that tradition. I've already been introduced, but I thought it might be good to just mention my background. Manager Education Strategy might be a bit vague of a term and a name. Before getting this position, I was actually the team leader for our diploma of IT, and have worked as a teacher both in engineering and in IT. And my background is actually, before I was teaching, was in engineering, in electrical engineering. So I've done a PhD in electrical engineering and robotics, and actually worked in industry as an engineer. But with that out of the way, the purpose of this presentation, this workshop, is going to be to talk about, as has been said, the most important digital/IT skills for a great career and in higher education. Now, I understand we have a broad, I guess, age group or banding of of people here today. I think we've got some parents and teachers, but we've also got lots of students at different levels. But hopefully you can get something out of this presentation today, this workshop, whether you're looking at going straight into university, whether you're still doing high school, or maybe you're a teacher or you're a parent or something like that, and thinking about what might be good for you to work on as well for yourself. Hopefully there will be time for questions at the end of the presentation. But by all means, if you do have questions as I'm going, feel free to type them into the chat. And if I can answer them then and there, I will. Excuse me, sorry. Otherwise, we'll get to them at the end, hopefully. I can see there's already one little thing in the chat. Okay, that's just some information. Cool. So without further ado, so what is this presentation? What is this workshop going to go over? So we're going to be looking at first defining what we mean when we say digital skills. So digital skills is a bit of a nebulous or very broad term with lots of meanings. And in order to discuss digital skills, we need to kind of lock down what we mean by it. After we've talked about that, I'm going to go over some very specific applications or concepts that those who are successful with digital skills or have good digital skills will be able to practice. So these are things like collaborative technology, data competency, adaptability, and then in the end, we'll conclude it by looking towards the future of what technologies we can see coming around the corner, and indeed very quickly moving into our daily lives as we know it. So what are digital skills? That is the fundamental question we need to understand to be able to discuss this topic. There's lots of different organizations and businesses that like to define these things. I've got here a definition from UNESCO. So it reads, digital skills enable people to create and share digital content, communicate and collaborate, and solve problems for effective and creative self-fulfillment in life, learning, work, and social activities at large. Now that's a very fancy selection of words there that doesn't say a lot, but when we break down what it's saying there, we're looking at digital skills create, communicate, and collaborate in a digital space, okay? And the purpose of creating, communicating, collaborating is to solve problems across life, learning, work, and social activity. So essentially, in all aspects of our daily lives that we live in, we're going to need to apply and have digital skills. Specifically, we're talking maybe about learning and work here, but I think it's important to understand that this is in every aspect of our lives at this point. Most of you or all of you would have grown up as what we would call a digital native. That means that's someone who grew up with technology as part of their lives. Even I'm in my 30s. I grew up with the internet being a thing that was around, whereas the older generation would have had to learn this. We all were born into it, and so we understand that's a part of our lives. Now, when we break down these skills, we can kind of categorize them into certain groups. So if we look at one definition, there are other definitions out there. This is just one interpretation. We can think of our skills as being, firstly, we have our digital foundational skills. And by and large, definitely most young people, but most people in general will probably tick the box in having these sorts of skills. And I'll go over what they mean in a bit more detail in a moment. Next up, we have communicating, a very integral part to digital skills, but also another one that most people will be able to tick a box and say, yes, I have digital skills in communication and communicating. More at a higher level of skills, we have handling information and content. We have transacting or exchanging. We have problem solving, which is the maybe most interesting and most applicable of the skills in terms of your further career and work. And then also being safe and legal online and understanding what the risks are when working in a digital space. So we're going to go over these topics now in the next slides. So firstly, digital foundation skills. I mentioned that all of you should probably have these skills, or if not, maybe you're working towards them, or it's something that you can pick up maybe relatively quickly when you need to, when you get into a new position, or even when you start a new area of study or new career. So these are things like using a web browser, using Office software such as Microsoft Word or Google Docs or anything else like that. knowing how to open apps, which sounds very rudimentary, but some people don't will struggle with these sorts of things, and it is an important skill to have. How to open apps, but also how to install apps, organize your computer so that the things you want to use are accessible to you. Navigating an OS, and other similar skills. Now, another part to the foundational skills that I want to touch on here is understanding the language and understanding the jargon of the digital environment. So when I say an OS, can people tell me, what does an OS mean? What is an OS? So in the chat, maybe, if you can type that out, first person who answers quickly gets 10 imaginary points. You can tell me, what does OS stand for?
Dr. Shannon, actually, we have disabled chat because
that's fair enough. I thought I should have asked that beforehand.
no, because
That's perfectly
300
fine.
plus participants,
Yeah, I understand.
We'll go wild. Thank you for understanding.
I understand, no worries. So, well, I'll ignore the chat part of it, that's fine, but hopefully a lot of you answered that OS stands for operating system, which is the first step in understanding these sorts of things. But there is lots of jargon like that, that it is important that to work in a digital environment, you can speak the digital language. So OS is one example. Another example would be HDD, a hard drive, or what is an SSD, which is a solid state drive. And these are different tools or technologies that are existing in the digital space. I'm not saying you need to know all of these words and all of these terms, but it's something that if you are having digital skills and you're feeling comfortable in a digital environment, you shouldn't be off-put by hearing these words. And it should be, maybe if you don't know exactly what it is, you're able to go and find out what it is. But as mentioned, I expect most of you will have these digital foundational skills already. Next up is communicating. So obviously communicating is, or maybe not obviously, but for your reference, communicating is the primary use of the internet itself. And indeed, it was why it was created originally, to transmit and send and receive information across vast distances in a network. And again, this is one of those skills that most of you probably can already tick the box and say that you can do these things. Things like sending and receiving emails, using messaging services, participating on social media, and other similar methods of communicating. Indeed, what we're all doing now today is a form of digital communication, participating in a Zoom chat, as it is, a video call or video conference. Although at 375 people, I feel like we're beyond conference, and maybe we're at gathering or something like that. And although this is a skill that most people have and everyone should probably have some level of expertise in, it is still important to acknowledge that it is a core part of working in digital space. And we'll get into more advanced methods or more detailed look at communicating later on in the presentation. One important thing to note here, often using technology for communication is the only experience that people will have with technology. They use their devices, and this can typically be in the older generation. They use their devices simply to stay in touch with family and friends or get their news and information. And when we think of that, you can think of maybe, your mobile phones, for example, as that primary device that you use to communicate with others. Okay, the first, I would say, higher level or more involved skill is the idea of handling information and content. It might sound trivial at first, saying handling information. Well, I can handle information, I can take it. But this skill is not just about getting information, it's about getting information that is relevant, getting information that is reliable, finding information that is accurate and true, especially in this age where we worry about things like fake news, worry about misinformation, especially around all sorts of global political things that have been happening in the past few years. It is a skill that needs to be developed and will be practiced and developed and built up over your time, both at high school, into colleges and universities, or if you work in the real world. Hopefully, part of what you will learn when you go to university and when you start higher education is how to critically assess and critically evaluate information, and understanding how information can be manipulated and how information can be can be searched in a digital space is a really, really important skill, and also quite a marketable skill as well. When we talk about this in a general sense, you can think of it as things like using a search engine effectively. So that means not just going to Google and typing in hats when you want to search for a hat, but actually using extra search terms to narrow down the search that you're looking for, to use certain search tools, which I can show later on in the presentation, to filter that search that you may be looking for certain price ranges or time ranges or other things like that. And then also evaluating the results that you get and not just clicking on the first thing that shows up, which is more than likely going to be an advertisement that someone has paid to show up there, and actually looking at what you're linking towards, making sure you're not getting tricked or misled into doing anything. It also includes assessing the viability and reliability of the information presented. This is especially important when browsing your social media, whether you're using, I don't know, Instagram or Facebook or any other thing, WeChat, for example, or even looking at news websites and reading the news that you see there. So thinking critically about the news, about the person that has presented that news, the reasons behind why they have presented that news, and whether it is reliable or not. And that leads into the next point there, critically analyzing the source of the content. So not just the content itself, but where it has come from and why it's there. And that can be applied to everything in life, but it's especially important in the digital scope, where we are, as mentioned previously, we are primarily processing and looking and sharing at information and data. Okay. Next skill area I want to touch on is transacting. So transacting is kind of a fancy way of saying buying and selling things online, to put it very simply. And it's quite a common skill that you would maybe have had some interaction with, depending on how old you are, and I guess how many things you like to buy online, and whether you like to buy things in real life. But it is an important skill to muted. Thank you. Okay. So much of our economy now is moving online. Am I still muted? I'm not. Okay. So much of our economy now is online in a digital, in the digital space. So our banking accounts, for the most part, are online. And maybe yours aren't. Maybe you're still going into the bank account and using ATMs. But at least that's the direction the world is moving towards, where everything is online, everything is digital. We have PayPal, we have many other different forms of payment online. We have things now like decentralized currency, things like Bitcoin, and all of the other versions of Bitcoin like Ethereum, Cardano, etc. And so it's very important to understand the implications of buying and selling things online and how your information is used. If we talk about specific skills related to this topic, we have things like setting up a user account, which sounds incredibly trivial, and I'm sure all of you can put your personal information online. But the thing you need to consider here is how much personal information should you be putting into this website, and what are they doing with your personal information? Is it going off getting sold? Is it getting mined for more information? Is it a fake website that you're putting information into, and they're going to hack into your personal accounts and steal all your money? These are all things you need to be aware of, and highly developed skills in this field will help you save you a lot of money, I guess, in the long run, but also keep you safe. Obviously, this is related to purchasing goods online, purchasing services online as well. We have some very common things like eBay or Amazon that you might have had interactions with. But there are lots of other areas that this comes into, especially when we talk about services. A lot of software has licensing agreements where you essentially pay a monthly or yearly subscription to be able to use that software. Even Microsoft Word, I believe, works in this method now. But lots of industry software works on subscription services. You could think of it like your streaming service if you're using, I don't know, Netflix or whatever other services like Netflix that you might have at home as well. Again, in this skill, we have different payment methods that might be available. I mentioned PayPal, but obviously there's internet banking, and there's many other companies doing work in this field. And then correctly using forms and feedback mechanisms within the internet. Again, this is a skill that you'll just develop naturally as you use the internet. But to use it well, you need to be considering the implications of what you're doing. When you put information online, what are they doing with that information? Okay, and then lastly, well, second lastly, I should say, we have problem solving. Arguably one of the most important skills you can develop as a professional and as a student is digital problem solving, how to solve problems in the digital space. This skill category here combines many other aspects from different skills together into one subset. You can think of it as relating to if someone ever asks you how to do something and you say to them in response, just Google it. Googling it correctly is applying good problem solving skills. So if you've got a problem, you ask Google a question, knowing where's the right place to go, using FAQs or frequently asked questions, using forums to solve those problems, understanding how other certain softwares can be used to help in the problem solving. So for example, the phrase someone might say to you is, oh, there's an app for that. You know, you want to know the weather at a particular day. You want to track your run. You want some software to manage your finances, for example. Understanding how to find that software and then how to install and use that software to solve your problem is a really, really important skill to have. And the idea is that all of this can improve your productivity as a professional. So whether you're working in the digital space or whether you're working as a doctor or a lawyer, or maybe you're managing a shopping center or a grocery store or whatever else it might be, these are still skills that you can apply to improve your productivity, to improve your workflow, and to have better outcomes within that work. So it's not saying that you need to know how to program necessarily. This is saying that you can navigate a digital space and use digital tools to make your life easier, is effectively what this is saying. And then the last one, which was touched on when we mentioned transacting, but it's important enough to stand in its own, is about being safe and to a lesser extent being legal online. Now, in terms of legality, country to country, rules are going to change, laws are going to change. So I'm not going to comment too much about that. But in terms of being safe online, it is a really, really important skill to develop. And it's one that people tend to overlook. And I do it myself as well, especially when it comes to things like passwords and security. In terms of this skill, if you are well developed in the skill, you'll understand things like cloud storage. How does cloud storage work? What happens with your files when you share them online? Where do they go? You'll understand password security. So what makes a strong password? What makes a weak password? Why is it important to have strong passwords? And then common types of attacks. So what type of attacks exist? So for example, we have phishing attacks. Phishing spelled with PHISHING, where a person or an individual will produce a website that looks like an exact copy of another website. For example, your bank account website. And they might send you an email or direct you to go to this particular website. And when you look at it, it looks exactly the same, but it is not the same website. And when you type in your password, they collect that information and then they pretend to be you and can log into your bank details. So being a digital savvy and having a highly developed skill in this area will mean that you're aware of these attacks, you're aware of what is done and how you can spot and how you can identify these sorts of incidents. So going back to my example with phishing and the fake website, there's a few ways you can do it. Firstly, you should understand that your bank account will probably never send you an email with a link in it. They'll tell you to go to their website, which you know of where it is, and you can find it online. You can also look in the address bar and you should see that it says HTTPS rather than just HTTP, the S meaning that it is secure. And lastly, you can check what the actual address is. So let's say your bank account is called thebigbank.com. Check your address, and if it says thebigbank dot something else, then you know it's probably not your actual website or your actual bank. Or maybe they changed the I. They put two I's in big when they type it to make it look the same at a glance, but in reality, it's actually different. So knowing about ways to circumnavigate these attacks or knowing that they exist at all is a really, really important skill to develop. But it's something you kind of only develop over time or by putting in effort into looking at it. It's not something that's going to develop naturally unless you actually think about these things and do some research on them. Alrighty. So let's move on. So these are, I'll just jump back slightly just to reiterate that these are the broad categories of digital skills that we've defined using, this is from it's a government website from some country. I think this was Britain, perhaps. But these are just broad categories that we can use to define what digital skills are important. So we have our foundational skills of just using softwares, browsers, the computer in general. We have communication, so emails, messaging, etc. Handling information and content, transacting and problem solving, and lastly, being safe and legal on time. These are all key aspects that to be successful and to work well in a digital environment, you should be comfortable with each of these categories of skills. So if you reflect on this list here and you think, okay, well, I'm pretty good with my foundational skills and I can use email and chat and messenger and all those sorts of things really well, but I haven't really thought about how my information is shared online, that could be an aspect for you to work on and think about when you're developing your skills and when you're improving yourself in the future. But now we're going to go on to discuss, I'll just get back through these. Oops. To discuss some specific technologies and specific examples of digital skills and how we can, or what these look like in actual practice. So the first thing I want to talk about is collaborative technology. Arguably, the biggest advantage of working in a digital space is the ability to instantaneously and seamlessly collaborate and share your work with a range of other people's. Right now, what we're doing is a perfect example of that, whereas I'm in Australia, thousands of kilometers away, presenting some information to almost 400 people in another country, 4 hours in the past, as it were, instantly. Or maybe there's a bit of time lag. I'm not sure what the delay is like, but at least fairly instantly and seamlessly. And indeed, if we were working together on a report or a document, I could be typing into that report and you could be editing it at the same time that I'm typing it. So it is, without putting it out of proportion, it is by far the biggest advantage and the biggest benefit to working in the digital space. And it's a skill in an area that if you're not already across, that you must adapt to if you're going to be working in a professional environment. Indeed, you'll be forced to adapt to. So to put it bluntly, get used to working in a digital and collaborative space. Obviously, what's happened in the world with the pandemic and things like that has been horrible and terrible. But it has made people much more digital savvy and much more digital ready to work in these sorts of environments, and the world isn't going to go backwards from here. There's going to be a continuation of people working collaboratively, and the other topics we'll talk about, there'll be continuation of people working remotely and working by distance and working in all sorts of other places. So how do we collaborate, or what are the important aspects of collaboration? Well, obviously there's a whole range of technologies and software that support this, that make it available. We're using one of them right now with Zoom. And there's many others that are out there, and I'll talk about a few of them in a moment. Digital collaboration allows us to seek instant feedback, to co-create content, to track changes, and if needs be, go back on those changes and go to earlier versions, again, instantly and seamlessly. It also allows us to work iteratively, which essentially means that I can work on one small aspect of a task, get feedback on that task, edit it, review it, update it, and then move on to the next task. Whereas the traditional way of working is I might write a whole activity or a whole piece of work, a whole report, and then review that whole report. And if there's a fundamental problem with that report, I don't know that there's a fundamental problem with the report until I've gone through the whole process of writing it. Whereas working in this instance, working iteratively, means that we can find problems much quicker, we can fix those problems and move on much more efficiently and much quicker. So what does it look like? Well, we've already mentioned Zoom, but some other things I want to talk about are file sharing, is a really, really important part of working collaboratively. So this is using things like Google Drive and Dropbox, SharePoint, I think is Microsoft's solution to it. And I'll just say right now, obviously you might be doing some of these already, or maybe you've used them in the past, or maybe you've considered using them in the future. What I would say is there might be more to explore with the way that you're using these technologies as well. For example, when I first started using Dropbox, it was just a way for me to back up my files in the cloud, in a computer somewhere off in probably, Southeast Asia or in America. So I had to back up my files. So if something went wrong with my computer, my files existed there. And if needs be, I could access them anywhere. If I went to a different computer, I could still access those files. Nowadays, the use of file sharing is really about what I just mentioned before, about collaboration. And it's not just that I can back up my files and I can access them anywhere. It's that I can let you access my files anywhere, or I can stop having you access and let someone else access them. I can edit them anywhere as well. I can edit them on my mobile phone if I really want to. I can get an iPad tablet or whatever other tablet device and start editing them on there too. So think about the ways that we can use this beyond the obvious is a really, really important thing to be doing. Next up, we have video conferencing, what we're all doing right now while we're in. Zoom is probably the biggest one, but Google Meet is out there, and there are many other services. Obviously, you can video chat through your social media, through Facebook. I think iPhones have their own special version of it that I don't have an iPhone, so I'm not really familiar with it, but lots of different ways video conferencing is out there. And really this past year past year and a half now, has really made video conferencing go to a whole new level. So it's beyond, we'll do it when we have to talk to someone internationally. Now we'll do it even when they're in a different office across from me. We'll have a quick video chat. It's become a integral part of the office environment and working professionally. Some other ones you may have had some experience with, especially as students, is maybe perhaps using digital whiteboards. So collaborating together in a digital space, everyone editing the same file, same thing at once. And I could show you what that looks like now, using collaborative softwares like Google Docs, Google Slides. And again, I think Microsoft have their own version of Microsoft Online, and other softwares probably have other online versions as well. And then also using project management software. So there's lots of softwares out there. Trello is one example. Another one's called Keep, which allows us to track a project collaboratively. So everyone can see the list of tasks. You can assign tasks to certain people, give them due dates that interacts with their calendar and reminds them of what work's happening. So here, this is just an example of a screenshot of my Google Drive. You can see I've got many different people that are sharing files with me. I can search for those files. I can see when they've been shared. I can arrange them and actually open and access those files as well. It's an example of Zoom. I just did this, at home and just quickly threw an example together. But you can see here we have a few people here editing a Word document together collaboratively. Everyone's putting input into the Word document, and they're able to edit it live and discuss it together, rather than it being a slow process where one person creates a document, sends it away, waits 5 days for someone to respond, and then continues on it from there. And here's a good example. This is from, I think, the Microsoft website, but this is just an example of a digital whiteboard space used for collaboration, used for idea generation, but also used to track goals and tasks. So to keep an idea of what is important in the project, what needs to be done, and to assign those tasks to individual people as well. Alrighty. I will show an example. I think it might be beneficial. Just look at time. Actually, I won't show that example because I think we'll run out of time. But yeah, hopefully you've all had some experience with some of these tools. And I was just going to show that through Zoom itself, you can do digital whiteboarding, or you can use other third-party software to do that as well, which allows people to, I can just show you through this, to mark up and comment different parts of a document together collaboratively. So everyone can do this live and see what everyone else is doing. I'll just turn that off and we'll keep going. Okay. Next up, data literacy. So I mentioned that the internet is just information. The World Wide Web The digital space, it's just information that's getting shared and moved around. So it's really, really important that we can read that information, that we can read that data and understand what it means and how we can solve problems with it. Some of this stuff you probably have been experienced with, especially if you've done maybe science class and you've recorded information and you've tracked some data, or maybe in economics as well. You might have been exposed to using software like Excel or Sheets or Microsoft Access or database software. If you are what I would call a data literate person, you should know how to filter and sort that data. And if we're talking about digital skills, you should know how to do that automatically within a digital space. Identify trends or key information in that data and present that data in a meaningful way. And then lastly, underpinning all of this is the understanding of what does that mean and what hasn't been measured. So here's the softwares that I mentioned, Microsoft Excel, Sheets. This is Microsoft Access, which is a database software. There are probably many others out there, but these two are the main ones that you would have probably already had experience with, but you might have just used it for some basic things. So when we talk about filtering and sorting data, I'm going to stop the slideshow here and just show this. So this is a little Excel spreadsheet that's embedded into my PowerPoint here. And this is, let's say this is some example student data. You know, this is their marks and this is an averaged mark of their data. And in here, I have my data and I can easily and quickly turn on a filter within Excel and then filter or sort the data, say alphabetically, by name. Maybe want to filter it by final marks, smallest to largest, or I want to ignore certain marks. Maybe I want to say filter out any marks that are less than 50. Okay, so this is the student who failed the first test, and I can see how they went in their other tests really, really quickly. So being able to navigate data and filter all of this data is a super important skill to have. This example is in Excel. You can do this in many other softwares as well. I just want to stress that. Next one I mentioned here is identify key trends or information. So again, I'll step out of the slide and come into the data here. Now what I have is a table of numbers. It's very hard for me as a human being to really get anything out of this big table without reading every single line and every single bit in it. I don't want to do that. I want to use the software to make my life easier. So I can highlight my data here, and let's say I want it to identify failed results. So less than, we'll say 50 again. And now very quickly my data is highlighted. I can see, okay, these particular students have failed one of the tests that I've given them. I can also put some coloring on my data to make it really easy to see where the weak spots are. Okay, so even though these ones have failed, this student is the one who's failed overall. Everyone else has passed, but this student might be borderline, for example. So I can quickly look at data, manipulate and manage that data to get meaningful information out of that data. The next aspect to it is present that data in a meaningful way. So here I've got my filtered and sorted data, and I've put myself a little graph next to that just to see what does this mean. And again, like this might sound like really simple stuff, but it's really, really important that we understand how to get to this point here, how to manipulate my data, to present it, to find it, and then to look at, well, what does this all mean? Or what am I not seeing here in the data? And this part here where you're looking at what isn't measured, I might say, okay, well, these students, they're high income earning families, so they might be getting better results for some certain reason. These students are mature age, whereas these students are underage or immature. These students are from low socioeconomic backgrounds. So all of this information is typically not captured, and we need to be aware of it when we're dealing with data. What aren't we seeing? Okay, or what are the implications of the data that we're finding? And this is a really, really important skill and a really, really difficult one to I guess, implement fully, especially when you don't know the big picture. Next thing I want to talk about is adaptability and flexibility. So someone who is working in a digital space, working with technology, it is very, very important that they are able to adapt and able to change, because by nature of digital technology, it is constantly evolving and constantly changing. I can think back to, I think a good example is, every year there's a new model of the phone that comes out. Every couple of years there's a new version of the software. And every time they add some new functionality to that software, they add some new features. But more importantly than that, you don't want to be locked into a particular type of software. So when you talk about adaptability and flexibility, there's a few ideas that come to mind. So firstly, we have the idea of work from anywhere. So no longer is it you work in the office or you work from home. Now you might work in a cafe, or you might be expected to work on the train into work, or you're going to be working from a different country or a different city or a different state to where the rest of the people are working. You should be able to embrace new systems. So if you're at work and they decide, hey, we're going to change our software suite, we're no longer supporting a particular set of software, or now we're going to use a new programming language. If you're working in IT, you need to be able to adapt to that and change that new software very, very quickly. You should be willing to compromise, especially when you're trying to solve a problem, a really difficult, complex problem. You need to be not locked into a particular solution and able to switch and adapt to that solution as needed. And you really need to focus, and this is really important for the students thinking about study, is focus on skills, not on software. Okay, so you want to learn the skill of programming, not the software of Python, for example. Now, obviously, you'll learn Python, but the takeaway from it is the skill of how do you write code and how do you write program, right? And this applies to everything, not just coding things. If I'm learning, for example, I teach a 3D modeling unit where we teach a very specific piece of software. The thing I need to stress to my students is they're not learning the software, which in this case is Maya, because when they get a job, that company they're working for probably won't be using that particular software. They'll be using a different piece of software, and they'll need to have the skills so they can adapt to use that particular piece of software. Okay, so this is the last topic here, future skills. I'm going to move through this fairly quickly because we're just kind of looking towards the future and I'm conscious of the time. But there are a lot of skills, a lot of technologies that are on the horizon of our understanding. They're being developed and explored currently in labs and in experiments and in research projects, and they are very quickly moving from what I would call future tech to science fact. When we talk about what these look like, so the first one I want to mention is coding. Now, obviously, coding has been around for decades at this point, 50 years or more. But as a integral is needed. And there's two parts to coding. So the most important part of coding is being able to understand logical problem solving. Okay, being able to solve a problem following a logical process, the same way that you would solve a problem using coding. Not necessarily the particular language, for example, C++ or Python or anything like that, but knowing how to solve a problem within that structure. But what's on the horizon, what's in the future, is having the ability to know a programming language to be equivalent to knowing how to drive a car or how to operate a piece of machinery. And that is a skill that you have and a tool that you can use to help you solve other problems that you have in your job. So not just for IT professionals, but for doctors, for lawyers, for accountants, for definitely involved in business, for engineers, and any of those other fields as well. Next up, we have artificial intelligence. AI is already interacting with our lives on a daily basis. We have apps like OK Google and Siri and Alexa that are able to interact with and help us in our daily routines. We have voice-to-text recognition softwares, and already we have self-driving cars that are driving on our roads with other people. So this technology is already very quickly embedding into us, and it's only going to become further involved, and it will get to the point where, again, it becomes another tool that you can use to solve problems in your job that you might have. So you might use it to analyze large sets of data and give you some sort of input or output based on that information. 3D printing is another technology that is already kind of interdispersed throughout many different fields. Every single manufacturing facility will use 3D printing as part of their rapid prototyping process in today's standards. But what's going to be happening in the future is 3D printing will become a developer of end solutions. So you will print end products that you will use. You might go to a hardware store, and instead of walking down rows and rows of shelving to find the hammer that you want to buy, you instead go up to a machine and you tell it to print a hammer for you. And then they store metal and plastic and wood, and they combine them in their printer to produce the part that you want. And the last thing I want to talk about is the way that we interact with machines, the human-machine interface, the human-machine experience. This image here you might recognize from one of the Iron Man films, I think Iron Man 2. And at that time, it was pegged as science fiction, but in reality, what we're seeing there is more than capable of being done in today's standards. So today we have gesture-based interactivity and gesture-based displays. With my phone, my tiny little phone here, I can set it so that I hold up my hand and it will take a camera, take a photo of me, so I don't have to have two hands to take a camera. Or I can just smile and it will take the camera, take the photo for me. We have holographic displays, not as powerful as the ones shown here, but we do have the way of displaying information in 3D space. And more to the point, we have augmented reality and the ability to go into virtual spaces through 3D headsets and other sorts of vision tools. So the way that we interact with machines is going to, and computers in particular, is going to rapidly change. That's kind of the next big area to change quite a lot. And we've seen a lot of experimentation in this field, but it hasn't hit market yet, or hasn't hit industry yet, other than a few niche areas. So I can give you an example. There are some car manufacturing companies that have experimented with a heads-up display for their employees that shows them the instructions that they need to be doing while they're doing their task. So they've always got the information there with them while they're working, and they don't have to go and refer to a manual or an instruction set and slow down their work, essentially. That's just one example of it, but being able to work in this bridging space between humans and machines will be an incredibly useful skill. That's something that that maybe your children will grow up with, similar to that you grew up with the internet and technology being such an integral part of your lives. But that is essentially it. I did rush a few of the things at the end because I saw the time was wrapping up, but thank you guys all very much for listening and being patient. I am happy to answer any questions. I can stay back if needs be, but otherwise I would like to thank UCB and everyone else affiliated for letting me come today and speak and talk to these points. And I'm happy to have any more further discussions with anyone if they have questions about future tech or about Monash College or Monash University. I'm happy to talk about that as well. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Shannon, for your wonderful, timely presentation, and we enjoyed thoroughly. It is important for us because we saw the transitions, we saw the before pandemic the world, and now we see the new world. So two worlds. If we want to survive in this new world, we need to be acquainted with this digital transformation. People, if you have any questions, you can write on chat, or you can raise your hand so that we will give you the flow. You can ask. By this time, let me share a slide from us as well that shows the programs we do offer at Universal College Bangladesh. So these are the programs basically we do offer at Universal College Bangladesh, like Monash University Foundation Year, Monash University Foundation Year, which is Australia 12 comparable. So right after your O level, you can join us to do Monash University Foundation Year. So you don't need to go for A levels. Rather, it is comparable to Australia 12. It means that after MUF, you can directly enter into first year at university, at Monash University. So you don't need to go and spend 2 years in your school. Also, we do offer Monash College diplomas of business, IT, Engineering and Applied Data Science. These are Monash University bachelor degree first year equivalent. That means once you do these diplomas, that will give you guaranteed entry with certain condition to Monash University second year. So these are the programs we offer. And if you have any questions, you can you just take a screenshot of this slide. We do have these numbers. You give these numbers to your parents and ask them to communicate with our counselors. They will be guiding you to complete your admission procedure. And if you have any questions regarding entry requirement, scholarship opportunity, or admission procedure, our counselors will be guiding you. Also, you are invited to visit our fantastic campus at Gulshan 1. It is wonderful, post-modern, artistic campus over there. If you visit, of course, you will not be able to yourself to visit our campus at Gulshan 1. It is at ESA Tower. So you're invited to visit our campus as well as to ask questions to our counselors. Also, you can write to us admission@ucbbd.org. Our counselors will be replying you. You can visit our website, ucbbd.org. I can see a lot of questions, Dr. Shannon.
I might
so
start answering
one
some
by
of them, if
one,
that's
you
okay.
can answer.
Sure. So I see at the top from Trisha.
Also,
it's the first
most
one
of the questions are basically based on admission related.
This one here is about what is the most
a lot of
effective way
questions regarding
to acquire a skill.
Admission related. Dr. Shannon, can you read from chat? So you can answer whichever you want.
Yeah, can you hear me?
How is coding useful for doctor? How can we learn these skills for free? My goodness.
I can answer them. Can you hear me, Jamal?
You are not audible.
I'm not audible.
Dr. Shannon, you are not audible.
Okay. How about now?
No, you are not.
Is your sound on? Because it looks like I'm transmitting. I don't know if you've turned your sound down.
I cannot hear you. I don't know what about others.
Okay.
Shannon, go ahead.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So, yeah, so the first question I can see from Trisha Actor, sorry if I'm mispronouncing any of your names, by the way, I apologize in advance. Question is, what is the most effective way to acquire a skill?
Other hosts can help me, whether you can hear Dr. Shannon or not.
Someone want to just let Jamal know that the problem was with him. I can't find the type of thing. Anyway, so Trisha, great question. What is the most effective way to acquire a skill? Incredibly open-ended answer. I can't obviously tell you, you just do this and you'll acquire a skill. It depends greatly on the person. It depends on how you learn and what interests you as well. The most common advice I tell my students is that you should learn what is interesting to you. So, you know, obviously there's times in lives where we pick things to learn because we have to, because it's required to learn something else. But when you're trying to learn just for the sake of learning, the best place you can start with is something that you find interesting, something you find entertaining, or you want to know more about, and start there. In terms of picking up specific technological based skills, there's lots of things online that you can use to help you learn. A lot of it you'll learn through experience and over time. If we want to look at a specific thing like coding, for example, there are some free courses online that can get you started with coding. There's lots of good YouTube videos. There's lots of bad ones as well, so be wary with that. And then obviously through actual higher education, you can kind of formalize that learning a bit more. But there is also a difference between learning a specific software or technology versus learning a broader skill or concept. And the second one, learning that broader skill or concept, really requires you to reflect and think hard about how you can apply what you're learning in different situations and different areas. So sorry, I can't give you a distinct, perfect answer to that because it's such a broad idea that you've asked for there, but hopefully that helps you. I'll leave the Jamal, can you hear me now? Okay, cool. Wonderful. So I'll leave the questions about like degree specific things to you perhaps. So there's a question about master's degrees for UCB. So did you want to answer that one?
At this moment, we have been offering two programs. One is Monash University Foundation Year and Monash College Diploma. So these are pathways program for Monash University. So we do not offer master's program at this moment at Universal College Bangladesh.
But obviously once you finish your degree at Monash University, you could then take on a master's after that as well, or apply directly, presumably, somehow.
Yes, we do have Educa Pathway. We do have another sister concern. So they do process for Monash University master's programs. So if people have a specific query for master's program, they can communicate with us,
Sure.
of course.
So next up, how can we learn these skills for free? I mentioned before in answering the previous question that there's lots of things online that you can find. It really takes an inquisitive mind to start going and searching and maybe using some of those skills I mentioned about finding things and solving problems online. Your problem, it sounds like, is you want to learn some specific skills. So start with Google or a search engine and say how to do whatever it is you want to do. And maybe you can learn some stuff from there. Because it's great to have students come through that already have an interest and an understanding and a background in it, which is not to say you need to have that, because most of our students don't, but certainly the ones that do are good. The next question from Tejash Das, again, apologies for mispronouncing names. How is coding useful for doctors? That's another great question. I actually thought about an example for how doctors can be using coding in the future. Now, this assumes the doctor isn't spending huge amounts of time just to learn how to code in the first place. But in terms of solving problems, you can think, okay, well, what problems might a doctor be having on a daily basis? And now, of course, it depends what work the doctor's doing. But a really simple one that all doctors will have, and a lot of indeed professionals will have, is how they manage their time. And so if you're able to, and a doctor has lots of appointments coming in and lots of other scheduled activities and work happening, and they have some flexibility over when they do that work, but not when it's happening. So coding can be used very simply to write a little program that's going to look at all of the jobs that you have to do. And each one, this is a 15-minute consult, this is a 20-minute consult, this is a 3-hour consult, then I've got a meeting. It can look at your timetable, look at your schedule, and then automatically arrange it in a way that makes sense. Now, it could be that you go search for a program that's already done that for you, but if it doesn't exist, then you can quickly write a piece of code that basically just takes all those blocks of time and arranges them in a neat schedule for you. And you could say, well, I could do that. I'm a human being. I could spend the time to do that. And sure, you could do it once, and you could probably do it 2 or 3 times before you write the code to do it. But if you need to do it every single week for a year, it might be quicker to just spend a day writing some code that's going to solve that problem for you. And obviously, there's lots of other problems like that, but that's the idea of how coding can be used in a more daily or more everyday sort of situation. Someone just wrote diploma of engineering. That's not really a question.
Before you go to next question,
Yes.
and for the people on the announcement for you, like if you do not have your NID or passport number, you can use your school ID number, so that you can have the certification based on that. So complete the registration form based on your school ID.
Yep.
Thank you.
So just scrolling down, I can see some of the people just following up. So I think we've answered that. How I admit to Monash? How will I admit in Monash University and get a scholarship? So I'm not sure, but maybe you can answer to that, Jamal, but I'm not sure about scholarships being offered or anything like
that. Yes, we do offer a scholarship based on result from 30% to 40% at Universal College Bangladesh, and also based on result, that is scholarship will be continued in Australia and Malaysia. It is, it is based on result.
Mm-hmm. Next one for you as well, Jamal. What are the requirements for IT bachelor's degree?
Just you need to finish your A levels or AS levels. For if you come after your A levels for Bachelor of IT, Monash College Diploma in IT, you need just score 5 once you have. That is enough based on 3
and that's
subjects.
To get into Monash College Diploma of IT?
Diploma, yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
And if you have AS, that will require your 7 for AS.
Cool. A common question from people from Anwarul, will AI become a threat to human dominance? Lots of people have different opinions on this. If you listen to Elon Musk's, he'll, I think he does a lot of doom and gloom on it. I am not a believer in that, at least not in the immediate future, which I would classify as the next 50 to 100 years. But definitely, I could see AI is solving a lot of world problems that we have, or at least simplifying a lot of problems that we have down to fundamental questions about maybe price and implementation, as opposed to can we do it? It's how much will it cost to do it more so. So no, I don't see it as a threat to human dominance. I think more of a threat to human dominance is humans themselves than the AI, at least at this point. Maybe in 50 years, it might be different though. How can I get these offers, Jamal, do you have any comment on that one?
Offer means like a scholarship offer or other offers. Like, yes, of course, our counselors will be communicating with you. We do have your contact numbers, so they will be communicating with you if you have interest for our, our programs at Universal College Bangladesh. So
It's a question about
in that case, you can.
environmental science for master's degree. I think it's not part of what UCB is doing. So, so I guess the answer is no. But obviously, Monash University has lots of their own master's programs. You can self-investigate that. Should I learn data analysis too besides MS Excel? So MS Excel, again, this comes into the skill versus software area. And so Microsoft Excel is a software. Now it's a very ubiquitous and common software. So knowing how to use it well is a great thing to do. But data analysis is kind of separate to Microsoft Excel. And indeed, if you do a unit or a course on data analytics or data science, you're probably going to learn a programming language to help you do that. A programming language like Python is typically what's taught with data analysis. Cool. So next, I want to see the link between the world of work and the digital skills that we need now to meet the 2030 demand. 2030 demand, fair enough. Honestly, at 2030, what you're going to be looking at is where I talked about future skills. You're going to look at some of those becoming much more prevalent and everyday. That being said, there's still going to be the professionals doing the work that they're doing. It's just that there'll be tools that support them. So if you're familiar with those sorts of tools, so familiar with data analysis specifically, I think, and to a lesser extent, artificial intelligence. And when I say saying artificial intelligence is a bit of a buzzword, to be honest. Really what I mean is machine learning, and that is using computers to automatically solve problems that we don't know what the answer is to. And that's when you have a huge amount of data and you want to figure out what does all this data mean. I can get a computer to analyze and figure out what the data is telling me almost instantaneously. That's really what we mean by machine learning when we talk about this stuff. So that's what's going to be really happening in, say, the next 10 years. 2030 feels like forever away for me because my brain is kind of stuck into the year 2000, but it's only 9 years away, which is not long at all, really. Have any diploma for medical records? No. We do have the science diploma, which I guess is the closest thing to that area, but not specifically for medical records. I'm doing Bachelor of Science. What program should I select? So we have a Diploma of Science. So that would lead directly into the Bachelor of Science for you. Can we learn? Sorry, I made an assumption that I assume you are offering the Diploma of Science, Jamal?
No, we are not offering in Bangladesh.
Okay, well, that's fine. So then there are, I mean, if your goal is just to get into university, once you're in university, students do have some option to transfer and change degrees, but obviously means you will need to repeat units and it'll take much longer to do. So if you're set when coming through this pathway, then engineering would probably be the best bet because it has units that are in the diploma in the Bachelor of Science. So you will do chemistry, you will do maths, you will do physics, which are all part of the science bachelor, but it is not a direct connection by any means. Can we learn coding who aren't science background, engineering background? Definitely. And you might not have units in your degrees that specifically teach coding. There's lots of tools online that you can learn to pick this stuff up pretty easily and pretty quickly. One that I've used before is called Code Academy, but there's many others out there. And I recommend if you find a good YouTube tutorial, maybe try and follow along with that. I mean, finding a good one can be difficult because sometimes people are just really annoying, but try a few different ones before you give up on that. Can we get certificate? I think that's about today, so I'll skip that.
Yeah.
Scrolling down a bit. About the registration certificate. How to learn coding efficiently and quickly. Learning coding is a bit like learning a language. You really want to be able to practice it and to do things with it. So it helps to have a project in mind if you just want to learn coding by yourself. But often a good coding course will guide you through making and building something at the end of it. Some questions about masters, I'll skip over. I think we've answered that. Everyone's saying they can hear me. Okay, yeah, wonderful. Yes, questions about certificate, masters, more hearing me. Any PhD degree available. So that's not really part of this, but obviously if you do your bachelor's really, really well, you can definitely pursue a PhD after that. That's a good question for you there, I think, or it came to me directly actually. Does the Monash University Foundation course, is it recognized by other universities and other universities worldwide? So I guess the question is, what do they get out of the foundation year course as a certificate or as a qualification in and of its own?
Yeah, we have been receiving this question quite a lot from our admission seekers, those who want to pursue their higher education in USA, Canada, whether MAF is accepted or but they are not. So the answer is what happens based on previous track that this degree, I mean, MAF is well accepted in these countries, but we cannot name this university particularly that, okay, you can go with this degree with this university, but it is accepted worldwide.
Yeah, and in my experience, it's kind of to a small extent case by case, but usually no issue. Within diplomas itself, because we have the same thing if you do a diploma. Typically, if you have a completed diploma, it's accepted across all Australian institutions. But again, I can't name specific ones because they might have very specific requirements. But if you do say half of the diploma, you can still get some credit for units as well. It would depend on which units and what degrees and all those sorts of things too. But
yes, what we can say that Monash University has a memorandum of understanding with some Australian universities like Deakin RMIT Swinburne. So these degrees are accepted with these universities. So we can name this, but for USA, Canada, yes, these are accepted.
Yeah, I definitely can't speak for international. I'm really just Australia focused, unfortunately. I'd love to travel again, but not at the moment. Some admin questions I'll skip over. Is a future in economics sustainable? That's a weighted question, Zane. Now I'm not an economist by any stretch of the imagination, but there are talks about what are the future careers, what careers are going away, what careers are on the uprise. The only one I've heard of that's kind of on the down in terms of business side of things is really accounting. And even that being said, that's not like in 3 years accounting is not going to exist anymore. It's still quite a long-term trend, and there will still need to be accountants at some level. But this is really where, if you're an accountant, you want to be upskilling in the digital skills area so that when changes happen, you're best placed to profit from those changes that are happening. And so I don't know economics specifically, but I assume it's a similar idea that you want to be able to use machine learning or data analytics to improve your estimations and your predictions on what's going to happen in the economics world. And economics is more and more going to become an IT subfield rather than a business subfield, or a combination of both, a double degree in IT and business. Might be someone who works in economics.
I think you're done more or less.
Yeah,
with the
there's a lot more comments, lots of people saying thank you. So thank you to all those people as well. Obviously, if there are any other important questions come through, Jamal, feel free to forward them to me. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Sure, of course.
Thank you for having me today. Thanks for everyone for listening. I hope it was valuable. And I guess I'll see you guys, maybe not later, but maybe later. We'll see.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you
Thanks
very much, Dr. Shannon Rias, for your wonderful workshop conducting. And let me also formally thank some of our organizers, those who helped us to organize this event. First of all, I must thank Adam Thompson from Monash College Australia for your wonderful work to make this event happen. Thank you very much. Sui from Monash College Australia, thank you very much. Mr. Amit Chaudhary from Universal College, Head of Marketing. Resalat marketing team, thank you very much. And also team members from Universal College Bangladesh, Dr. Sandeep Group CEO, STS Group, principals of different schools, thank you very much. You shared the links with your students, the way you help to successfully organized this event. Thank you. Thank you very much for your cordial behavior as well as your positive mindset. And career counselors of different schools. Thank you. Thank you, sir, madam. I can see a lot of counselors join today in this session. Thank you very much. A lot of teachers from different schools join today. And students, thank you. Thank you for joining us. And hopefully you will receive certificates by 15 days. Our team will be sending you the certificates. Thank you very much. And finally, I must thank today's resource person, Dr. Shannon, for your wonderful, interactive, engaging. The comments shows that you were interactive. You made your engagement with the participants while conducting that session. Thank you very much for being a wonderful resource person today. Thank you. With that note, for today, we are ending. And if you have any info, if you want to know anything about admission requirement at Universal College Bangladesh, I would like to request everyone to communicate with our counselors. We do have website, we have phone numbers, email addresses, so do collect them. You will be able to get whatever you want. Thank you. Thank you very much.